Domestic abuse has become a huge problem in the United States. With all that is known about domestic violence, why is this behavior on the rise in what is supposed to be a civilized culture? Many people ask, what kind of man would commit such inhumane acts on a woman he is supposed to love, protect, care for, and cherish? It may surprise you to know that domestic violence is everywhere. It affects people of all ages, races, the poor, and the very wealthy. And that brings us to our next story.
Domestic violence is a leading cause of injury to women. It's also becoming a public health problem in the United States. 1 out of 4 women in America report being physically or sexually abused by their intimate partner, and the costs of domestic violence exceed $5.8 billion each year. $4.1 billion is for direct medical and mental health care services.
And every 9 seconds in the U.S., a woman is either assaulted or beaten. That's why here at the New Jersey Hospital Association, about 50 healthcare providers are learning how to safely engage with victims.
Hospital-based IPV intervention will reduce healthcare costs by at least 20%. After experiencing a fatality of one of her patients, Anna Trotwin researched how healthcare providers should best approach a victim.
It's not what they're asked, it's how they're asked. So that's part of the education of giving people different types of questions that can enhance the patient's comfort and confidence at the moment in her life when she feels she can disclose.
For Ann Bakchi, a new nurse in New York, this training session helped her learn how to strengthen a nurse's relationship with the victim.
There's a lot of violence in New York generally, and I just felt like I need to be better informed for screening for domestic violence and other types of violence, really.
Men are also involved in combating violence. Pa Bedovillano believes a female victim can talk to both a male or female caregiver.
I think by being open and sincere and warm, that can help the therapeutic relationship and a woman to open up to a man.
We are now joined by our panel of Dee Dee Benkie, media analyst Jackie Guzda, and Huma Hasan from Wafa House, a home for victims of domestic violence. Ladies, we thank you for joining us here. I'm going to take our first question. Huma, you work at Wafa House, and this is a home for domestic violence, so you are sort of our expert on this. If you can just explain to us exactly what domestic violence is.
If I may correct you, it's actually Wafa House.
Wafa House, pardon
Absolutely.
me.
No, not at all. Actually, domestic violence is a pattern of non-consensual behavior where an individual subjects another individual to, whether it be violence, physical violence, it can be financial restraint, it can be sexual violence, stalking, mental, emotional, verbal abuse. And it is a widespread epidemic.
And we've seen the numbers go up and up, and you know what's most staggering to me when I was doing my research was that 3 women in the U.S. die each day at the hands of a boyfriend or husband. It's just mind-blowing to think that's happening here in the U.S. The question is why? Dee Dee?
Well, you know what? This is just so unacceptable. And as far as why, I mean, what is wrong with these men? You know, I have a real problem with that because, you know, women feeling empowered, I think in any way possible, whether they have a weapon with them, whether they know martial arts, whatever it takes to be able to defend themselves, because it's just unacceptable. Why they do it, they're just stupid and they're bad people.
Okay, and I appreciate that comment, but I'm also going to bring up the fact that a lot of people are attributing this to the rise of unemployment. People are losing jobs, and there's just a little bit more stress in everyday life. Jackie, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the situation is much more complicated than that. Most abusers, tell me if I'm wrong, were abused in their own homes, were they not?
That is exactly what I was about to touch upon.
So a male abuser will have been abused himself and then go on and do that to his partner.
I agree. I understand that. I've read all about that. But why is it on the rise then? I mean,
well, look at the stressors that we have now. Unemployment is up. Everything's going wrong. There's not enough jobs. There's people are losing their homes. Yeah, when you are stressed, you're going to take it out on someone, and so they're taking it out on their partner.
So what are some of the risk factors?
Well, the risk factors are that you're going to be promoting, unless something is done about it, it's a cycle of violence. A child living in an abusive home is 300% likely to be a victim or an abuser future down the road. And if we don't prevent and we don't educate our youth, the children, the future of this society, you are going to have what is considered to be a pandemic. It's going to be absolutely out of control, and it is now. The reason why we see a rise is because people are now reporting it. Once you speak to the community and say to them, listen, you've got rights, that's the reason why you see a rise. And this is only what's reported, by the way.
I was just going to say, what are the estimated numbers of unreported?
I'm going to talk to you from a Wafa House perspective.
Okay.
Okay. We see on average 2 to 3 clients on a daily basis.
New clients.
New clients on a daily basis. We have served thus far in 9 years 2,500 clients, not just limited to the state of New Jersey, throughout the United States. And of those 2,500, easily 60 to 70% of those clients are undocumented. So they fear deportation if they speak up.
And it's not only that, I mean, think about it. Here's the man that you love, the man that you promised to love forever, somebody that you share your home with. How embarrassing to go out into public and say, he's beating me, he did this, he did that. I agree with you, it's a horrible situation. However, we've got to look at the reasons so that we can get the solution.
I don't care what the reasons are. I mean, I get that that happens, but what I don't like is when these men go to court and they get out of it because, oh, we feel sorry for them because they were beaten as a kid. Who cares? They did it anyway. I don't think we should be empathetic. I think the laws need to be stricter, and I think that the penalties need to be stricter.
I think the laws should
it's
be
unacceptable.
stricter also. But I think that in order to eradicate this problem, we've got to go and figure out why it's happening.
What about educating the abuser himself?
That is the key. Rehabilitation is the key, and that's where our organization is a rather unique organization. We do work with the abuser as well. Listen, the victim's safety and empowering them is paramount. If that individual says to me, listen, this isn't going to work, I fear for my safety, we have to respect that in every way, shape and form. But the key is to be able to offer a service to the perpetrator. I was just after training yesterday talking about batterer's intervention.
Now, Dee Dee, you're shaking your head on this one.
You know what? I think if a guy is a beater, it's probably always going to be a beater. I mean, how many times are they rehabilitated? Probably not that many times. I'm more concerned about the victim. I don't think the guys are victims. I think we're talking like the guys are victims here, and they're not. They're the beaters. They're the ones that are attacking women, beating them, killing them, raping them.
Zaleh Huma, let me ask you another question about on that case as well. Women who are beaten many times go back, and they'll go back and go back. How do you break that cycle? I mean, we'll talk about the men, but how do you break the cycle of the women going back?
The biggest reason, it's called battered wife syndrome, okay? More often than not, the victims blame themselves. Let's just say for the sake of argument, and a situation has escalated. They'll say, oh, well, maybe I cooked the food incorrectly and he didn't like the flavor of it. It's all my fault because I didn't cook it correctly. So they blame themselves, okay? There is a huge financial component. More often than not, they're dependent on their abuser from a financial perspective, and it's a dependency issue. When the cycle of violence, the reason being the cycle of violence, it's perpetuated because they don't feel there's a self-esteem issue, they feel they're unworthy. I've had professors from universities, I've had physicians who are major breadwinners in their homes who are victims of domestic violence.
I was just going to say, this goes across all lines.
Absolutely.
Just tell me about some of your clients, and very, very quickly, who do you, I mean, not obviously naming names, but who do you see?
We see all walks of life, and it's not just the Middle Eastern, it is, we see anybody, it crosses all socio-economic, religious, anything that you can think of, any stereotype you may have. There is no stereotype. There is no stereotypical victim of domestic violence. We see, of course, 65% of our clients that we serve are of Middle Eastern descent.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about also what's happening in the cyber world. We're now seeing something new called cyberbullying, and it's happening with the adults, not just the kids. This is also on the rise, obviously, with the internet. Dee Dee?
It's very sad because we've seen a lot of these suicides. Just this last week, we had students and girls that they've committed suicide because they've been cyberbullied. They've been bullied and they can't get away from it. Or pictures have been put on the internet. They'll take pictures and put them all over, naked pictures, you know, which, I mean, the children need to figure out that that's a bad idea. But it still happens, and it's just a very serious situation, the stalking. I mean, I've had stalkers. And I've never met them, but it's still a scary thing because you're being stalked on the internet and you never know if they're going to come around the corner or not.
Well, let's talk about something else, another scary word, and that's sequestration. and what that is doing to the domestic violence prevention budget. Jackie, can you talk to us about
Sure.
that?
In general, 80% of the money that went to organizations like Huma's was cut apart after the sequester. And along with that, there was an 88% rise in demand for services.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 8 million work days on an annual basis in the United States are lost due to a fact that women have to take off work in order to be at home, whether they're getting better, because of the fact that they were a victim of domestic violence. That's 32,000. It's 32,000 jobs.
So it's not just a public health problem; it's also contributing to financial problems as well.
Absolutely. The United States alone, $5.8 billion is spent annually.
Let's talk
for direct
about,
services.
Let's talk about some of the resources that are available, and hopefully they continue to be available as this problem does continue to rise. Some of the resources that are available.
Well, of course, I'm going to say Wafa House
Absolutely.
for one. We service throughout the state of New Jersey as well as the United States. We've even serviced people in the Middle East, Egypt, United Kingdom and Canada. So we are there. Then there is the National Network to End Domestic Violence. There are toll-free hotlines. The key really is to educate and to let people know that there are resources out there. There is nobody who condones this type of behavior.
I know Dee Dee doesn't.
No.
Absolutely.
No.
Very outs-
Well, it is important for women whenever this happens, and I think especially you hit on such an important point about the financial, that they're financially dependent and then have children who are financially dependent. So they stay in the relationship because of their children,
Absolutely.
which is really bad in the end. But if there's a halfway house or a place
There are
like your
many
establishment,
places.
that's so
Absolutely.
important for women to know they're out there. So the advertisement is important, and then they're there and they're like, look, you're safe and we can get you on your way. Incredibly important.
Final thoughts, Huma?
Well, I just pray that we can continue the work that we're trying to do here, and I think intervention, education is key, raising awareness is key.
And we commend all your hard work. Thank you for,
Thank you very much for having
being
me.
here as well. And Jackie, your final thoughts also.
Sure. I want to take as much money as we put into defense, as we put into big business, and put it into yours.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you ladies for joining us on this very, very important issue. And stay with us, everyone. After the break, we're going to be talking about the Bradley Manning trial, which began early this week at Fort Meade in Maryland. Now, this case has divided the nation. While there is a lot of support for Manning as a whistleblower and hero, some are calling him, others say he is one of the worst traitors in our nation's history.